Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the October lull. Let's just dive into this. Let's not sugarcoat this. Let's just get to the raw truth. You know, I'm here to tell you what you need to hear. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I could make this very simple and I could promote. We have a great partner that we work with, John Comp at Northwoods Whitetails. I have a great relationship with John. Try to send him as much business as we can. I could make every video that I wanted to sell more food plot seed and put so much emphasis on why you need to focus on the food plots, and I would be doing you a disservice. And John's very aware of that because he knows that the food plotting is just a piece of the puzzle, right? Very important piece if treated right, but it's not the holy grail. There's so much more that goes into it, but what happens is there's so much emphasis that gets put onto that it destroys some common sense, right? So you get into this mid-October time period, and what happens is a lot of folks just don't want to hear the truth. So, like I said, you flip on the social media, and folks that are selling box blinds or getting paid by a big box blind company, won't name any names, or a big food plot company that they're getting paid by, or whatever the case is, just connect the dots on why they're promoting those food plots and why they're blaming certain things with the October lull. So kind of a rant point, but just I encourage everybody to do that. And the reason I say that, guys, is I'm here for your best interest. I'm here to make you a better hunter. I'm here to make you understand why things work and why things don't. And I'm here to get the point across that is the quicker you learn this piece of the puzzle, the easier that your life will be. Let's just dive into this. So we're going to talk about this, guys, right here. The feeder, my feeders and my food plots, it's the lull. It's the October lull. You know, all the deer have moved on, went to the oaks, and my food plots are just, boy, they look good, but there's nothing eating them. They just must not be mature yet. The brassicas haven't frosted. There's nothing eating my food plots because there's no deer on them. So here we go. Guys, the feeders and the food plots, the lull that you're experiencing. So is there an October lull? Let's just get that out there. Is there an October lull? Absolutely. Some folks will tell you there is no October lull. Well, there is an October lull. It's the understanding of what the October lull is. That's the problem. So there's nothing on the food plots, right? We keep going to these box blinds and or tree stands. We're getting in here. And the longer that October goes on, the worse our sits get on those food plots because the food source changed and everything went to because it's an explosion of oaks. So here's what you have to understand. First and foremost, guys, on the food plots, you would have to own. You can have the best food plots in the entire county. You can have 30-inch brassicas right now. You can have been blessed by a lot of moisture throughout the year. The last couple of years, it hasn't been the case in the majority of the country. And or like we can do here in Kentucky, I back my food plots up with the feeders. So I try to give those areas as much tonnage as I possibly can and pray for rain, right? Here's the problem is, guys, you can have those best food plots. You can just get lucky, right? Your strategy, soil health, everything's spot on. Here's the problem. Everyone else, and not hunting, not thinking that you're over hunting your food plots, right? Here's the problem. You would have to be in Kansas, parts of Iowa, and I wouldn't even throw Iowa into this mix. You have to be in an area, guys, and there's, as you can tell, I can't come up with any right off the top of my head. It's not a laundry list of areas and states that don't get unpressured. Kansas, guys, half the size of Texas, has 25,000 bow hunters, whatever the case is. Deer out there, you can get away with things there that you're not going to get away with anywhere else in the country. The topography is totally different. The land is different. There's just a lot of things that play into why you can hunt on top of a food plot and blow deer out time and time and time again. I'm convinced that you could probably talk to the deer on the way out of a stand in Kansas, and they're going to probably listen to a story, and then they'll be back tomorrow night to listen to the rest of the story. They're not the same animals, right? It's a blessing if you're out there, if you're tuning into this, that's great. I hope it never changes for you. But even in Kansas, parts of Kansas, people talk about the October lull. So where I'm going with that, guys, is the you and I of the world, the common Joe of the world, the majority of the folks that own or hunt around the country don't have that luxury, right? So you would have to own in the common whitetail range, you would have to own miles. You would have to manage and make sure if you don't own all of it, this co-op that you belong to, you would have to own miles and miles and miles of acreage, square acreage, to not experience the October lull on a food plot. You would have, so your food plot, your pitchers on your feeders don't go down, your pitcher, which is a topic we're going to touch on, and also the food plots. And the reason for that is, guys, is you could be doing everything right, and I hope you are, right? You could be doing everything right. You could be not hunting your food sources at all, or not overpressuring them. Being honest with yourself, because and you're going to experience it because everybody else in that area, within 50 miles of you, the majority of you watching this, are doing it. They're hunting on top of their feeders. They're walking across fields on the way in the morning. They're blowing those food sources off. Guys, these whitetails don't get the credit that they need to get. We tried to make a whitetail. We tried to do what we want a deer to do, right? You need to think opposite. You need to put yourself in their shoes, and you need to tie your hunting strategies into their world from that side looking at you instead of us looking at them. It totally changes the game, and it helps folks tremendously each and every year. And it sounds maybe like I'm ranting here, guys, and I'm really not. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but it's such a huge piece of the learning curve that I hope folks just. It's hard, male-dominated sport. I get it. It's hard to take criticism. It's hard to point fingers at yourself. You know that old saying: when you're pointing one finger at somebody else, there's 3 or 4 depending on your farming accidents. There's 3 or 4 pointing back at you. There's a lot of truth to that. So that deal there, guys, is you would have to control such a large area not to experience it. So even more so, not to do that, not to be a part of that puzzle, and stop blaming the oaks for stealing all of your deer. It's not happening. And I'm going to tell you a couple things here that are going to open up your eyes. So that's what you'd have to do. One, guys, this deal right here is something that I learned a long time ago. The feeders. If you have a spin caster feeder, or you have a feeder that's elevated up in the air, that is taller than the deer, I would drive to that property over the speed limit as fast as you could possibly get to the property and buy yourself some tannerite on the way there, and I would blow those feeders so sky high and get them so far away from that property that it would shock you. You need to get out of that deal, guys. I learned that real quick, but in the state of Michigan, where I was, when we were able to feed, we grew up baiting. Let's just be honest, right? Where we were. I learned real quick not to be on top of that, though. It was a placement thing for me, right? Whether you believe in it or not, it was more feeding than baiting, whatever the case is. But when I moved to Kentucky, it was like, okay, I want my feed to last longer, and it was just corn at that point because I didn't want my feeder gumming up with a bunch of mold and all this stuff with a protein pellet, yada yada yada. So I come down here, and boy, I thought I had the world. Because up there you can't use a feeder with spin casters. One, I wouldn't do that. Two, it clogs up. It's cold temperatures. The batteries don't last. It's a nightmare. So we feed on the ground, right? We fed over on the ground, over a large area on the ground. But I get down here, build these 55-gallon feeders, put these Moultrie spin casting directional casters on the bottom of it, and I thought I had the world on fire, guys. I put those on the farm. First of all, didn't have a deer anywhere near them for like a week or two. Had to take corn out there and throw around it to get them to come to it. So I was like, I wonder what that's all about. Right? I've never experienced that. Then I was fighting the batteries. They were getting clogged. All of this stuff was happening. 2 weeks into it, I finally get deer on it. And then, to be honest with you, I don't think I ever really got any mature deer on that. Now we're talking like that year we could do, the first year I got here, we could feed before August 1st, and now it's August 1st. Make a long story short, guys, I learned real quick. The feeders come down. I got rid of them. And the thought process of these log trough feeders, which was Real Wood Productions then, guys, now we still have them. And we put the feed, I made a chemical tank feeder, or a feeder out of a chemical tank, put it on the ground. And guys, I'm not sugarcoating this at all. I'm not getting paid to tell you this, anything. I'm telling you, I had mature bucks with their face in that feeder that night. Within 2 days, all of the mature deer on my farm were on that feeder. And why is it? Because it's something different. It's not this, we call it the cannon. It's just there. It's relatively available. You're keeping the corn dry, other than what's in the trays, but it's below them. They're eating out of it, looking around. It's not above their head. It doesn't make a bunch of noise. You're not putting all that corn on the ground. Total eye opener. So I recommend, if you're going to do the feeders, do something different. One, first and foremost, get rid of the feeder that looks like a feeder. Real Wood had always kind of used that as, why would you buy a feeder that looks like a feeder? If I had a way, guys, that I could plant a food plot that didn't look like a food plot, I'd plant a food plot that didn't look like a food plot. And why is that? Because it's different. It's not the alarm. These food plots right here, guys, this word right here, hunting food plots, or food plots in general, that word ruins more farms than it helps, period, because of the stress factor that it creates. So I can't emphasize that enough, be the person in the neighborhood that thinks outside the box, that is not hunting your food sources. Don't hunt your food sources in the morning. Don't go across them. Don't go back across them in the evening. Don't blow deer off from that. If deer make it to that area with during the archery season in October, they should be safe. If you put the importance on your food plots, not blowing deer off for those as much as you put them on your sanctuaries, the sanctuary word, your bedding areas, guys, that change alone will put you on the map. Will totally change your property. So let that one sink in, guys. Like I said, that one there is something that I hear continuously. So let's just jump into this with the oaks. The next step here, the oaks, right? So we hear this all the time. The deer left the food plots because the oaks it's so dominated in oaks, and then the oaks taste better, and they just rob all of our deer. Well, here's the facts, guys. If you take a handful of acorns and you take a handful of corn, guess what is more nutritional? Guess what has more protein? Guess what has more fat than the other? The corn has more value than the oaks. So ask yourself that. If that's the candy crop and it's drawing all the deer away from your feeders and your food plots, but your corn or your food plot has more nutrition than your oaks, I'm still digging for the answer on that one, right? That's not what's happening. Okay, so take a handful, send it into A&L Labs in Indiana, and do the math yourself. Do the research yourself, guys. You'll find, I don't care how dry your corn is, the mass crop of it's always going to outdo the acorn. So here's the deal. When you start running numbers, right, you're going to see that the whitetail deer, depending on where you're at in the country, like I always tell everybody, that woody browse intake never drops below 50%. Farther north you go, the higher it goes. Here in Kentucky, the woody browse intake is 75% of a deer's intake is woody browse. If you're watching this from Michigan, you could be 90%. If you're in the UP in Michigan, you're definitely 90%. So you take 7, 8 pounds a day, 6, 7, 8 pounds a day, depending on where you're at. If you're in the Southeast, it's probably about 50% of the diet, 50, 60%, right? Because of the climate. When I say woody browse, guys, that doesn't include hard mast. Woody browse is not hard mast. It's totally separate. So what that hard mast is an extra to woody browse. Woody browse is your shrub tips, your leaves, your early successional growth, your grasses, your forbs and forages, all that stuff that is promoted from the ground and or hinge cuts or something like that. Has nothing to do with hard mast. Hard mast is your nuts, your acorns, and your hard stock, right? So if it's here in Kentucky, 75%. So let's say it's 4 pounds of 6 pounds or 4 pounds of 8 pounds, whatever that case is, 50, 75%. How important is that oak? Because you still got to add grains and greens in. They'll go miles at night, right, to find the salad bar to wash these down. So your food plots, it's not that your food plots aren't being hit, it's that your food plots aren't being hit until after dark. So are you getting no pictures? If you're getting no pictures on your food plots at all, period, zero, nothing, well, then there's something to be said probably because there's not enough browse in your area. So the deer aren't really making it to there, and then the pressure. So your browse requirements, not only you, not picking on anybody, but the whole community is probably, Illinois, is probably so low on browse that they're having to travel so far to get to your perfect salad bar that it's not a player, right? So let that one sink in, guys. That's easily fixed, very easily fixed. But folks just don't want to hear this, right? You have to log. You have to do canopy removal on a property to reach woody browse, and put the importance on that woody browse. Once you cure that, your food plots will have more attraction. And the reason for that is they're closer to it, right? So it has to be the mix, right? You want the perfect mix. You want to hit that diet. You want to pinpoint that diet just as you would as if you're training for a marathon or you're trying to get your health back in shape like I am currently right now, trying to eat better. You start looking at that diet. That's the pieces of the puzzle. You have to respect that in their world because there's no way around it, right? That's what the numbers don't lie, as you always hear, right? So keep this into consideration. Is this piece right here really doing the draw that most folks think? Because here, let's just break it down even further. You got oaks. Everybody just says oaks, right? The acorns. The acorns if you're in the south, the acorns if you're up north. Red oak, guys, the majority, it can happen that they produce every year, but the more common red oak across the country only produces a mass crop, a larger amount every other year. So I'm not a red oak fan, right? I'd rather get the canopy gone from a red oak. I'd rather get the sunlight to the ground. I'd rather reach that browse requirement with woody browse, not hard mass from red oak, because you can't rely on it, right? What happens is the second year it goes to produce, it's a drought, it's a bad growing season. Guess what? It doesn't produce. Maybe these little, small little acorns. It's not the volume. The red oak is not supplying what you think it's supplying. So that's first and foremost. Then the white oak is the holy grail, right? But here's the deal, guys. They supply every year. But the problem is, in a closed canopy forest, they're not producing what folks think that they are, and they're not producing what they could if you release the canopy. So you're like I always tell everybody, guys, if I go into a property and it's got 90% oaks, and let's just say it's 90% white oak, it's going to be hard to hunt because your food at that point, your hard mast is spread out across the entire property. So what I would want, guys, I'm going to want the attraction in certain areas. So the first thing I would do, get the design done, find the core, make sure your entrance and exit strategies are bulletproof, and I'm select cutting that piece. And where if I bought one that didn't have any, I'd be placing those oaks along the transition, along the trail, 360 degrees around your farm to create movement to and from stand locations to drizzle food along them areas, not just this big oak savanna. You are forcing these deer to stay in and miss feedings. We are the hot weather of the deer world. We are forcing them to stay off their feet longer and miss feedings. Our pressure is what's doing it. So that it's just kind of a system that I just was real honest with myself years ago, and I started really figuring out what this lull really meant. It's a huge piece of it. So here is what happens, right? Folks say, okay, I found sign. That's what I always hear. All these videos you click on, right? I found sign. I found all these scrapes. I found all these rubs. As soon as I hear that in October, now if you're hunting public ground or a leased piece of property, and there's something to be said for that, right? I totally understand it. If you own property, guys, and you're watching this and you're a private landowner, if you say in October I found sign, my heart kind of sinks for you. And the reason for that is, how'd you find it? Well, I found it. I was in the property. If you own 20, 40, 60, 80 in the common whitetail range across the country, and you're telling me in October that you found sign, you found the latest scrape, unless it was on the way to check your food plot in the buggy that's on the edge of the field, or you're filling up feeders or something like that, which is not where it is. Everybody's finding it in the oaks because there's more sign in there, because that's where they're pushed into, and we're finding sign. So guess what happens is, so like, let's to finish that, is they find sign. What that tells me is you're on the farm destroying things, so you're making it worse. So now the neighbors, everybody implemented it. You tried not to hunt your food plots. Everybody else in the county or your area was hunting these food sources, blowing these food sources off. Now all of a sudden, your deer numbers, you're not having fun anymore. So you start researching, right? Well, your brain and your feet get you in trouble, and you start going in, you find all this sign, and guess what? You're internal of the farm. You couldn't pay me. You could not pay me enough right now to walk my property and look for sign. I ain't doing it. If you could have $1 million and say, here's the deal, walk your property right now, I'm not doing it. I wouldn't do it to the next guy. If I decided to sell this farm, I wouldn't do it to them. If I sold it, if it was listed right now, nobody's walking this farm. It's not happening. So no, the farm's not for sale. So that's how important it is, guys. If you put yourself in that mindset, your pressure spectrum is obsolete. Guys, I've got deer on the farm, all the mature bucks, every deer in the neighborhood are on alert because everybody else is hunting over their corn feeders. I'm lucky enough, I do have some, I would say, larger, pretty good sized neighbors. I got a 160, I got a 222 across the road, I got a neighbor just down the creek shelf, that's 300. But I've got a 20-acre neighbor, I've got a 10-acre neighbor, I've got a 40-acre neighbor, I've got a 55-acre piece. So what I'm saying is, guys, I feel it. It's not that I don't feel the October lull, because I do, but it's not from me. And I can guarantee you that the daylight movement on this property probably rates a 9 out of 10 or a 95% better than any other property around here. Is just because it's unpressured, period. So the mature bucks that I've got on the farm, all are in daylight on my feeders, my feeder cameras, all on daylight on my food plots. And they're struggling right now because of the drought and some of the soil issues I got going on that we surfaced this year. We're on horrible, horrible ground here. It's not an excuse, just being honest with you. So here's the situation, guys. I don't see that, right? I'm not experiencing that as much as everybody else, but I'm also not going to find the sign and going to look for it, to try to move stands. And I'm not grabbing a saddle, which I don't own, which I never will. I'm not going in to those areas and creating that. Like I said, you couldn't pay me to do it. So here's what, guys, at the end of the rant, here's what I want to try to stress to folks is this. If you have, let's just put this a red line to make a red line as the promoted line of travel, which we call the transition on the outside 360 degrees, hopefully around your property. Okay. I hope you can see that. The red marker here is probably about on its last video. What we do, guys, is I'm putting that what makes my situation stand out above all others is this: the properties that I design and or my own piece here and or my own hunting strategies anywhere across the country. I'm not just hunting an inline movement where I'm either one sitting on top of the food plot. Let's just put a food plot in here. I'm not just sitting in a box blind on top of here. What I refer to that as, guys, is obviously by now you know I'm not probably promoting that. What you're doing, guys, is you're sitting at the end of the rainbow. You're sitting at the pot of gold, and you're hoping and praying for the last 10, maybe 15 minutes before dark that the deer show up in that food plot. If you are in the common area across the country, the state of Illinois, New York, Pennsylvania, the list goes on and on and on, Wisconsin, those mature bucks, the chances of them sticking their face in that food plot in October is slim to none, period. Right? It's not the majority. I want to hunt the majority, not the minority of the situation of where deer are going to possibly end up. It's a very low percentage chance. This stand right here, guys, is what I call a 2 to 5% stand. I've got a video that we're doing in the training camp series, this online course that we're hopefully going to be putting out here, guys, and explains this real in depth. 2 to 5%. You don't have my attention. I'm not going to a 2 to 5%, which keeps me off my food plots. I mean, it's just that simple. So that's your food plot, right? And then right here, let's say you got clean access. You can get into a stand right here, clean access, and a bunch of your bedding is over here. Let's just use the common strategy, right? You got a bunch of good vegetation. You cut a bedding area in or whatever, and you're hunting. Let's just say you're hunting mornings, which I wouldn't recommend that. But you're catching deer coming back off from here, not in October. You're coming back in here, and you're catching deer coming back into the beds. Okay, so what you've got, guys, is you've got this inline movement. It's a one line. It's a one-stop shop. Here's what I find. You sit in the stand, and all of a sudden, you've got you see good numbers, when folks call me and they say, hey, I seen 20 deer this morning, I cringe because we got a lot of work to do, right? Here's the reason why. I love seeing deer just as much as anybody, but I want to see the right deer, not a volume of deer. And what that tells me is, guys, is you're in front of your does. You are not behind your does, you're in front of your does. So your does aren't locking into this first 100-yard rim of your food plot. So what happens is it's an inline way of hunting. So bow hunting 101, right? Get between food and bedding. That's what we're all taught. There's a missing piece to that. So you hunt in the morning by 8:30 early season. If you do hunt in October, which I wouldn't recommend, early season October, you get in here and you might as well get out of the stand after that rush of deer go past you, because you're not going to see anything else. Your hunt's over by 8 o'clock. A lot of folks will sit till 11. It's a waste of time. Go get something else done, because it's one line. If you missed it and you didn't happen to get lucky where something came in, whether they were kind of, looking for a doe or just being social, they came back in here this time of the year in October. It's a very low percentage chance. Hopefully you can get out of here, because what I'm seeing a lot of is a lot of folks are too close to this bedding area, and you're bumping deer out of here when you go to get out, and then you go to hunt maybe the same stand in the PM, or you hunt somewhere else. So you move out here closer to the food plot. Maybe you're not hunting the food plot, right? But your stand's right here this time. Well, guess what? You've blown this situation out, and now you're just on the opposite spectrum of it. So now you sit all night. You come to this stand, you get out, change stands, which is a great strategy for PM mid-October hunt. You come out here, and all of these deer are, maybe you didn't blow them, right? But if you did, they're checked up a little bit. By the time they get out here, guys, it's so late because they're stopping and foraging in these oaks. They're checking themselves up a little bit because they don't want to expose themselves in the food plot. You sit here all day. So this stand is probably the same as that one. Probably, I'm going to rate that one is still the same, 2 to 5%. These are both 2 to 5% stands. And I'm not being harsh on anyone, guys, but why in the world are we sitting in 2 to 5% stand opportunities? It's a waste of time applying pressure that everybody else is applying in the country, and it's pointless, right? This is what you want to focus on first and foremost. Unless we've got something coming like we've got this week, there's always that first cold front. Like I said, I'm not against, I'm not going to tell you absolutely no morning hunts in October. I'm not that guy. But I'm going to tell you is, so put it so far back in the back seat that you aren't thinking about it, so you don't get yourself in trouble. There has to be a big change that gets you to hunt. Because this is simple, guys. This 2 to 5% stand right here, that's not these two. This 2 to 5% chance could be the middle of October, second week of October, and you get a big, up north, maybe it happens a little quicker. Here, we're going into the middle of the month here in Kentucky, and there's a chance that we're going to have like a 30-degree temp drop. So, like around the 15th or whatever that is coming here by the time you see this video. And there's 3 days, and there's going to be some stuff on their feet longer and moving around, and you're going to get that spark of some movement early season. You'd be crazy to miss that. But here's the chance, guys. If you don't hunt this situation and blow this out in the mornings, that same stand, without moving it, without doing anything, becomes about probably, I'm going to just say, without just hunting the weather, this stand's probably going to jump to 50 to 60% by waiting to the cold front, not having it blown out, and going in and making a better choice at that same stand. Why? Because they're on their feet longer, they're out longer, they're not so far back ahead of you. It's a total game changer. But guys, there's a way to make this even more than that. Like I always tell you, if my stands are an 80% chance that I'm going to harvest that buck, or at least get eyeballs on him, or see the right deer when I'm in that stand, I'm not going. I'm watching college football, having a cold beer, whatever the case is, watching deer from the porch. I'm not going in that, guys, because like I said, everyone else is applying that pressure. You have to stand out. So got a video coming that we're going to do about just how important that is. So be looking for that one. So it's 50 to 60% just by playing the weather. But here's the missing link, guys. What I want to help folks understand is this one directional line of movement, this one directional just between bedding and food is the that stand. There's so much more than that, right? You got to look beyond that. The stand that I want everybody to experience is a stand that these deer there's a reason for deer to travel this way and this way. If you're in here, guys, and you happen to pick, you're not overpressuring it, and you get a good cold front that comes in. Is that cold front 10-degree drop, 20-degree drop, 10-degree drop in the southeast? Are we talking about a 30-degree drop in Michigan? A drastic, uncommon change, right, in your area. I want folks to be seeing deer left and right. You're in the stand, instead of just seeing them deer come from one side to the other. Like I said, get out of the stand at 8 o'clock. When this opportunity presents itself, I want you to be in the stand and see deer coming from the right to the left. And 20 minutes later, that same deer comes back that way, or one deer comes this way, one buck goes that way, 20 minutes later, another one comes this way. And why is that? How do you create that, right? That's, like I tell folks, 75 to 80% of folks across the country don't ever get to experience the rut. Is because they're hunting an inline stand when it's just one influx. You tell me if you're in front of the does and all of this habitat's back here, so you're taking the opportunity, separate video, but you're taking the opportunity away from these cruising bucks because you're putting so much does in core areas or, correct habitat areas. You're not giving the bucks a chance to have a place to bed and or close enough to you. what is going to make a buck go out here, come in this area when he's cruising after all of those doe settle back into an area? What's going to make him go out here, because it's high risk, but what's going to make him go out there and cruise that area when there's no correct habitat there? He's scent checking where they're at, not where they were, or they're he's going to look for those correct areas, guys. So you can sit in that same stand, you're not going to see any deer. But if you put yourself in these stand locations where there's oaks, scattered up through here, there's more oaks here, there's an oak here, there's some oaks here. You do have some oaks in the center, not a lot of them. Oak here, oak here, oak here, big oaks here, food plot here, another food plot here, food plot there, food plot here. All of a sudden, guys, what you've got is you've got reasons for these deer to go this way and scent check and that way and scent check on these promoted unpressured line of travel. You're in between it. So now you've got my attention. Now you've got a reason. When I'm in that stand, guys, these habitat pockets that we build are all working for me, not against me. So when I'm here in this stand, let's just use this one. I'm here in this stand. He's able to scent check. It doesn't matter if he's going north or south. He's getting all this information. I'm down here hunting this, let's just say a northeast wind. He's getting all this information out of these habitat pockets. He's actually hunting the stand that I'm in. He's hunting me just as much as I'm hunting him. So looking back at this whole picture, right? Trying to try to end the rant here, if you will. The quicker that a couple things. Quicker that you can put this into perspective, the quicker that you can teach your kids this, the quicker that the whole community understands this, the quicker that you can change a lot of hunting success. Guys, I've got some properties in some communities that I work with, and kind of word of mouth, right? I work with one guy, the neighbor calls. Next thing you know, I've got a couple groups in Michigan, guys, and I won't say their exact locations, but some of the unpopular areas in Michigan, Lake County, Newaygo County, that are experiencing a totally different hunt because they're the only ones not doing what everybody else is doing. So you've heard me talk about this before, guys, and then we're going to bring this one to an end. If you want to take your property and make it 50% better than it was last year, there's 3 things that you need to do. 1, don't hunt your does early because everybody else is doing it and you're creating a bunch of pressure. 2, don't hunt your food plots because you're overpressuring your food plots and everybody else is doing it. And 3, there's probably a couple more, but 3, don't hunt mornings in October unless it's the right morning. So if you start hunting October 15th, let's say it's a cold front, and the next week it's 80 degrees, does that mean keep hunting mornings? No. That means stop again, wait till it's right. Then when you get into that last week of October, last 10 days of October, the first week of November, the weather is a big key of it, but you got to spend some more time in the stand because, does it slow up deer if it's 80 degrees? Yes. But your chances are a lot better because of the rut. We're not anywhere near that, right? So, I like I said, guys, this is a big one for me. I try to educate folks as much as I can because, let's be honest, I learned from the School of Hard Knocks. I was this hunter. I was this guy that was blaming the October lull, blaming the oaks, pointing fingers, getting caught up into that. And if you take these facts, especially this one right here, it's kind of a joking point to me, but especially that one, the nutrition side of it, it's not what folks are doing. And don't chase. My stands, when I hang them, there's only one stand that has been changed here, is because of a deadfall and a storm damage that I had to change a stand about 20 yards in 4 years since I've been on the farm. They don't move. I hang them. Let's just say I went into a new property and I hung it in July, those stands aren't moving. There's some that I'm gonna hunt early. There's some that I'm not gonna hunt until the mornings. But guys, if you are doing that, you're adding fuel to the fire that you're not gonna stop. If you can say right now that you found rubs, you found new scrapes, you found all of this stuff, you either found it tracking a deer, hopefully. But if you found it scouting in October, you're a part of the problem. So Take yourself out of that equation in most pressured areas in the whitetail range, and you'll totally flip your success 50% better, 180 degrees than what you're dealing with believing that the October lull is what everybody is telling you that it is. Thanks, guys.